And hello, welcome, friends. This is the R&R&R Show, the pre-show, and of course the titles below where it says pre-show, they're not working again, but we're rolling with the punches as always. I'm Ruel Gagliolo, joined by my co-host Chris George, and we got a very special guest today, Travis Chance. Gentlemen, how are y'all?
Really good. How are you? Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Yes, it is.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah.
It's a spooky time. Ready for some spooky minis.
Yeah. Want to shout out Feldfan. Thank you for the resub. Feldfan, you've been subscribed for 20 months. And folks, if you're not subscribed already, you can subscribe for free if you have an Amazon Prime account. And what do you get with your subscription? All kinds of goodies. Number one, you get discounts on Rahdo merch. Number two, you get a secret playlist every month of videos that Richard and Jen have done that only you have access to. And I think the latest one right now for October's got like 20. So if you're a subscriber, you did not get that link yet, DM me or whisper me as they call it on Twitch, and I'll get that link to you ASAP. We are here. It's Halloween. None of us dressed up.
What are you talking about?
That's true.
Oh, Travis has dressed up.
I'm a middle-aged
Yeah, Travis.
Oh, I'm a
The
producer.
scariest sight of them all.
Yes. Well, I had I streamed on Saturday with my wife, and I had my Spock ears. But when I have the
That's pretty good.
headphones on, they're just not as effective. So I do have them in spirit today. Folks in chat, if you're doing the Halloween thing, let us know what you're up to, what games you're playing, what's your favorite candy, and why is it Snickers? And let us know what you're up to today. You know, I threw it out there. I'm gonna throw it out there, Travis and Chris. I'm all about the Snickers on Halloween. Snickers snackers in particular. Do you have any favorites that you'd like to shout?
I thought you said stickers. I thought you said stickers, and I was like, that's the worst thing. It's like the houses that give out toothbrushes. It's like, come on. Okay, we get one day a year to have ourselves a good time, and you're giving us toothbrushes
Or
You're giving us
stickers.
flyers or stickers. No. I mean, stickers, I guess, could be fun. No. I'm not even going to justify it. I'm not going to justify it. We need cold, hard candy. Like the apples. And even I'm willing to say that there's no cans of pop as well allowed in the trick-or-treat.
Whoa, pop.
Because they're too heavy.
Oh, yeah. Pop.
Or in Canada.
Oh,
yeah.
Whoa. That's
Yeah.
a Canadian thing, too? I'm from Indiana. They say pops.
Yeah, I guess it's a Canadian thing.
Okay.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. I'll naturally say pop. I'll lean towards pop instead of soda or a Coke, a Pepsi Coke.
Yeah, I'm here on the West Coast. I'm in Southern California, and we stick with Coke or Pepsi. We use brand names more than soda or pop. But yeah,
When
I
you
know
want a
pop's
Dr. Pepper, you say you want a Pepsi.
a Dr. Pepper and a Pepsi.
Yeah,
Oh man, you know, you just said the magic words. I've not had a Dr. Pepper in years. I used to love
They're
Dr.
so
Peppers.
good.
Yeah,
They're so good.
so
They
unique.
are.
But going back to candy, folks. I mean, I'm all about Snickers. Travis, you gotta. I mean, not stickers, but Snickers bars.
Right.
You got a favorite?
I would say at least 3 times a day I think about Jelly Belly jelly beans. Like, I really love them.
Yes.
And as a 45-year-old, you have to be a little careful, you know. Trying to elongate my lifespan here. So the more I indulge in those, especially like the assorted flavor bag where you just kind of, you know, it's like 1,000 things flavors in your mouth at once. That one's nice. I like that. And I tend to not against chocolate, but I tend to like the more like faux fruit chemical hard candy type stuff, sour candy, things like that.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of. Well, I mean, I used to like Jolly Ranchers, but then as I got older, I got more into like the sour stuff. What is the one that you get at the movie theaters? Sour Patch Kids. I love Sour Patch Kids. Those are.
Are you thinking of sour popcorn? You might be thinking of sour popcorn.
Sour popcorn. That sounds that sounds disgusting, but I would totally try it, I think.
Where you take a bunch of the sour sugar, you just dump it all over your popcorn.
Oh,
don't do that.
Man.
Maybe that's a Canadian thing.
Maybe. I would totally try it though. I do enjoy a good sour beer.
It's not a Canadian thing.
I was going to say. Someone clip that in chat. Let us. Sour popcorn is definitely not a thing. Magic Eric says that their best candy is Reese's peanut butter cups chilled in the fridge.
I quite like those actually.
I like those too. I think those are good ones.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I was home playing some games with my folks over the weekend, and they had all their Halloween candy set out, and I made it my goal to make sure they would have to go and buy some more. So just shoveling them in.
nice. And Cheese
Yeah.
Dud 6 says sour popcorn is probably not that bad. Yeah, see, I think you might have started something, Chris. I would totally try sour popcorn.
I've seen people mix
Yeah.
M&Ms into the popcorn. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
M&Ms into
Yeah. Yeah.
And something like kettle corn I like. It's just that whole salty sweet combo. I'm always down with that. So I would totally try, something sour.
Mm-hmm.
When's the last time you had a candied apple? I asked
Ooh.
Lindsay
Wow.
yesterday.
Really?
Never.
When we go to the grocery
Maybe once.
store, I'll always put things in the cart to try to make her laugh.
Yeah.
And so like I kept putting like more and more ridiculous candied apples that had just like all kinds of unnecessary extra stuff. These things, I was like, I don't even remember. I mean, I had to have been a kid. I don't think I've eaten a candied apple as an adult.
Me neither. Yeah.
I remember them being kind of my teeth being scared when I was eating them. So
yeah. Oh man, have I?
Yeah.
I was gonna say I probably no, I don't think I did, but I remember being fearful of like just yanking a tooth out when I bit into it as a kid. And
right, exactly.
Yeah,
it's like eating ceramic or something.
Right?
It's real
Totally.
intimidating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the last time I had a candy apple was the day before I got all of my teeth replaced. So that was good. They're all fake. Sense. They're all fake. I'm not gonna say whether or not it was by necessity, but after the fact. But not so fond memories on my end.
Well, I'll let you know, Chris. Your dentures look great, man. They look fantastic.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. I want to welcome everyone in chat. Thank you for hanging out with us today. You're watching the R&R&R Show. This is episode 75. What we're doing today, we're hanging out for the pre-show, just hanging out with y'all, chatting, getting to know Travis a little better. And then we're going to do a recording. We're going to record here live for the YouTube channel. We're going to be doing our top 12 games with miniatures. And I'm excited about this one in particular because I'm not that big of a miniatures player, actually. But then I was looking at I started doing my research. I was like, well, I played this one. I was like, oh, okay. I played more than I thought I did, but they're not always the games that, go to the top of my head. First things off the top of my head when we talk about gaming. I guess I'm more of a Euro.
Well, it's a good thing that we have a miniatures expert on our panel here then, Ruel. And talking about miniatures and introducing Travis, why don't you tell the viewers, because we were talking a little bit off camera about like designers who are sort of forward facing in the industry, and you don't feel like you're that forward facing, but you've been in the industry a long time. So why don't you give us like a background about your experience in the industry, how you got into board gaming, where you are now, and the various projects that you've dipped your toes into over the years.
Yeah, so I started making games in 2010. I was living in New York City. In my prior life, I was a drummer. I was like a punk rock drummer, hence all the
nice
visions on my arms. I blew my shoulder out, and I went back to school. I had like a panic attack because all I did was I was like whole hog on playing drums. And I went to school. I got like a project manager job at a big production company. I was very good at it, but I hated it. It was very soulless and thankless. And so I had this kind of weird, like, what do I want to be when I grow up moment in my like early 30s. And I was like, the only other thing I really like is games. And I wasn't really playing a lot of board games at that point. I was still playing Magic, and I was playing stuff like Scrabble. And then a friend of mine had mentioned like he was playing Dominion and he really liked it. A guy who played Magic. So I bought, and then Dominion was like the gateway drug. Within like 3 months, I had like 100 games, and I was jumping into the deep end of the pool on, like playing stuff like Eclipse. And then I got super into like Netrunner. And then I was just really, really into games. And so this is kind of a longer story, but it's I think a funny story. I applied for a job at Wizards of the Coast as a creative director, and I didn't get the job. And then they contacted me again like about 6 months later, and they're like, hey, just so you know, you were our second pick last time. And and we want to re-interview you. So I was like, holy, and this was like an amazing job with like a pretty high pay and like, you know, really cool. And so at the end of the interview, the interviewer told me, listen, we're not going to pick you again. You're our second pick again. And I said, what? And they're like, you don't have any game design experience. Like you have project management experience, like you've got, you know, like a really like a high knowledge of what we do, but you have no game design. So I, like, in a fit of anger, on my 32nd birthday, I watched Total Recall and I made a board game that was like this cyberpunky game called Infamy. And I got it published like very quickly. I like curated all the art and the graphic design, and I used the New York City game design group, which had people like Emerson Matsuuchi and like Zev Schlesinger from you know, WizKids and Z-Man fame, and Stephen Bonacore, and I just like really loved it. And so that game got published. It did not do very well. And then I did a second game called Heroes Wanted with my buddy who told me about Dominion, Nick Little, a really good friend of mine. And we started a company called Action Phase Games, and we did a game called Heroes Wanted. And actually, Rahdo was the guy who kind of championed that game for us when it was up on Kickstarter and really helped us quite a bit. And then from there, Action Phase did a bunch of games, which we did like the Kodama series, and we did Aeon's End. And then we sold to Indie Boards and Cards. I worked there for a year, and then I started Colossal Games, which Western Legends. I was there for 3 years. We did a ton. I mean, we were doing like 14 games a year.
Wow.
It was a lot. With the 14 games a year with me and one developer, I might add. And then I did a year of freelance. And then COVID happened and made that really fun. And I got to have like my version of being a game designer in like a Walking Dead type situation. That was really cool. And then CMON. I've been at CMON now for it'll be 3 years here soon. A year of contracts, almost 4 years. And then I was working there throughout the pandemic, which was interesting. And yeah, they just announced the first game that I've was designed on, which is a reissue of A Study in Emerald with Martin Wallace. He and I co-designed a new version of it set in the Cthulhu Death May Die universe. And yeah, I've worked on like 100+ games. I've done a lot more dev than design. And I don't know, I love what I do. I work with lots of cool people, and I get to do awesome stuff every day. I'm super grateful and lucky.
Awesome.
So that was my very long-winded.
Now, do you send?
Story.
No, no, not long-winded at all. I mean, you're covering the span of 13 years in less than 13 years, so pretty good.
Right.
I was going to actually act it out.
Oh yeah, now we're gonna do it like Celebrity. So now you just got to distill it to the one word.
Hold on, this is Wizards of the Coast on the phone. I'm like, so I'm not getting the job. Okay. Again, I'm not getting the job again. All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you send Wizards of the Coast a Christmas card every year saying, "I'm gonna design even harder"? This year, I'm designing even harder.
It's weird, you know, like this. I do this in my life. Like, there's been a number of times where like I've kind of like got really close to something I really like. I applied for the TV show Survivor, and I almost made it. Like literally, they called me and they're like, "You were one person away from being on the show," and and then I never tried again. I never tried again.
Travis, that's my favorite show.
That's my favorite show.
Survivor is my favorite show.
I don't know about this.
Survivor is my favorite show.
Yeah.
Oh, this new season, the cast sucks.
They're really,
but at least the Canadians doing well
because of, you know, feelings and things like the girl who was like, this is like so much harder than camping. Like I can't. I'm like, what did you thought this was going to be easier?
Camping.
Yeah. I at least like I feel for Hannah in terms of like she was probably hitting that severe nicotine withdrawal, but Shane dealt with it, was one of the all-time greats.
Right.
Back in Panama. Okay, this is now the Survivor show. Sorry, no more top 12 lists.
That's it.
Everybody.
I'm going to try out for the show again. I've been trying to I ran a half marathon last year, and I want to get in a little better shape because I'm 45 and I wake up in the morning and I don't like. I think I'm playing like hockey in my sleep or something. I wake up and I hurt really bad for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what did I do yesterday?
Yeah.
I went to the grocery store. Yeah, so
it's all the cross checks in the dream.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I love Survivor. Yeah, that was a show. I came this close, and like again, I got my heart broken because I didn't get it, and then I, crossed my arms. I never tried again. So
you've moved up as my #1 board game designer of all time, just because I know you're so close to getting on
cast me
Survivor.
as like a villain. They picked Tyson over me for Tocantins. Tyson
for
was
Tocantins?
right. They literally said to me,
I mean,
they're like, they're like, you came this close to being the jerk of the season. And I go, the jerk? I'm like, I'm a jerk? And then I'm like, how many people applied? And they're like, 50,000. And I go, 50,000 people applied and I'm the second biggest jerk? Like, that's not nice. No, this is different. I was living in New York and I was like, working in bars and drumming and stuff. So I was a much younger, different guy.
Right.
Yeah.
But
wow,
yeah, they picked
that's amazing.
Tyson over.
So
Yeah.
I actually have a friend who just got on. He was on this, 2 seasons ago. He's the biggest Big Brother fan I know, and he actually got onto the show.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and he said it was such a crazy experience, and he was the same way when he was on the show. He didn't know they were going to edit him to be the villain, but they did, and he's after you get to see the episodes. I think in real time or like just really like very soon afterwards, and so he just leaned into it. He knew he's just I'm just gonna lean into it, and he had a good time.
Yeah, I mean God, if they would have picked me, I probably would have been a monster. But I don't know now. Like
Tocantins. Oh man, Tocantins was such a good season too.
Right. I don't know that I would have been buddies with Coach, but.
Yeah.
Tocantins was brutal because that's before they just were like, we're gonna put him on an island. That was like some weird like desolate place in Brazilian outback or something, right? Like
our friend John in chat says
its landscape is so different.
John in chat says next week we'll talk to Reiner Knizia about his appearance on Ninja Warrior. Thanks, John. I love it.
That's true. Oh, Dr. Knizia goes all out.
Yeah,
you should see him scale up those walls. All of his tile laying really prepared him for the sort of glass bridge Squid Game style games that they have out there.
When I was 19, I worked at Nickelodeon in the props department on Double Dare. And a show called Legends of the Hidden Temple. So I don't know that in any way qualifies me to be, because like the Survivor's a lot harder than Double Dare.
Yeah.
You're with your family, you're wearing like comfortable clothes. You're like, the worst thing is you're like, oh, we're gonna have to do laundry when we leave, right? Like Survivor is brutal, and it seems like they're kind of overcomplicating the game. It's almost like the amount of rules, or it's like Kickstarter stretch goals. They're like, all right, we're gonna add all this extra stuff.
Yeah.
The game doesn't. There's a grasshopper, and if you can teach him calculus, you can get an advantage. But if you combine it with another grasshopper, and you're like, what? Like,
that's great.
The earlier seasons where it's like there was an immunity idol. There weren't hidden immunity idols, none of this stuff. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
We got a question from Corthane. I don't know if you can reveal the secret, Travis, but what is the secret recipe for the Nickelodeon slime?
So when I said props department, I want you to understand, I put things from the warehouse onto a truck and took them off the warehouse and off the truck and put them back. It's not involved in the beautiful alchemy that is making slime.
Got it. Well, I want to go back on one thing you're talking about. So your background as a punk rock drummer, I feel like that gave you that DIY spirit, right? From the get-go, when you didn't get the thing with Wizards of the Coast, you were number 2, you just said, hey, I'm just going to do it myself. And you became a game designer. Do you feel like that played into your, game development as a game designer, or?
Sure. I'm a little bit of an odd duck in that, like, I still have a lot of those values, but I also I really believe strongly in like work ethic and earning things, and like I think like people who spend a tremendous amount of time like learning how, because you see a lot in I probably sound a little bit like an old man or something here, but I've met people who are like, oh, I've been working on my game for like 2 weeks. now there's AI art. I'm putting it on Kickstarter. I'm like, whoa, 2 weeks? Like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, and then I look at this like, I've been at CMON for 3 years. This game has been sitting around for like 18 months going through production. And it's only now, and I haven't been allowed to say a word about this, right? So like people who try to like totally short circuit the processes, Kickstarter is all about that, right? And we wouldn't have amazing, cool. There's so many games that would have never made it through a normal publisher's editorial process, including some stuff that I've worked on. And so I'm super grateful for that. But at the same time, there almost is a degree of like being able to just kind of circumnavigate all formal logic and rules and the process is kind of wild. Like Kickstarter is kind of, when I started on Kickstarter and where Kickstarter is now, is like very different landscape.
Right.
So, but to answer your question, yes, and that was like for me, like coming into CMON. CMON's a very big company, right? I didn't get to be the big prima donna. Like my general work policy is like, if I'm not the hardest to work with person on a project, then something's wrong. So like coming into a company that's like full of people and like really talented people, you know, like we've got veterans, like one of the designers like War of the Ring is on the team, and like, you know, we have Adrian Smith and like just these like epic legendary people who work for CMON. And CMON is like really like honestly an amazing work environment, like super positive. Artistry is king within the company. The creativity and artistry is king in the company. It really like they put a really high premium on that, much more than I think a lot of people would probably imagine for a company that size and that makes the kind of games that we make. But yeah, I mean, you know, like I definitely like to try to have that kind of entrepreneurial, kind of free thinking approach to things. It's just a matter how you temper that against like working with others, right?
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. You know, I heard the punk rock thing, and I'm an '80s kid, and I grew up on like I was in the thrash metal scene, and there was a lot of crossover with the punk scene. You know, in Southern California, we had, you know, bands like the Circle Jerks and stuff like that, and then, you know, through that process, or through that scene, I got to know scenes like in DC, like Fugazi, Minor Threat, all those type of things. So it's exciting to me here. Yeah, I'm excited to hear that, you know, are there any bands that I might have heard of that you were in, Travis?
I was so actually interestingly, my band, my hardcore band from the 90s, we just played some shows for the first time in 19 years. And it was pretty crazy because the scene is actually bigger for that music now than it was when we were making it, which was crazy because I just like 19 years ago was when the last time we played a show. And then I step out onto a stage, there's like more people. There's actually infrastructure for the shows now. Like, nice. Bands are being fairly paid and taken care of. The sound is really good. And we got to play with some people that, you know, were in their like 20s and 30s that were just like, insanely talented. But yeah, I played in a band that was called Usurp Synapse, like a weird hardcore. There's some stuff in there that's like, I look back on it and it's like we're trying to be intentionally provocative because it's the late 90s and that stuff would not fly now.
Yep.
Nor would I want to. It was funny because when we got back together, we're like, hey, we got to kind of like talk about our image and our politics, because this stuff's a little different from when we, you know, plus we're older, we have careers. Everyone in the band's like doing crazy stuff now, but like we got to get back together and play, and it was really cool, and it felt really cool to be like a part of that again. Very, very lucky that I like, it's almost like you know, putting wine away or like alcohol so that it can age, and then you come back and it's like better than what it was before.
Nice.
I couldn't believe it, like that there's still a scene for this stuff, that anyone even cares. So
that's great.
It's really cool.
Yeah. That's so awesome. There's a show coming up here in Southern California, I think in Orange County, and they have a lot of these bands that I saw, you know, I remember from the 80s and 90s, like, wow, they're still playing. That's awesome. And I was wondering, you know, you said it's been 19 years since you played. Just physically, how does that feel? Especially in a drummer, a very physical, musician. Like, is it hurt more now than it did 19 years ago? Or
well, I had a career-ending injury, so like I blew out my rotator cuff down to 3 tendons. Ooh. Like literally, I only had 3 tendons, and like I was in agony for a long time. But I've been playing. So I played drums up until that band played its last show in 2004, but I played drums up until about 2010. And then, so it hasn't been 19 years since I played. It's been a while though. And then I started playing with like a local band here in Tampa, which is like insanely, like literally fast, like punk, like fat records, like, boom, da, boom, da, boom, da, like just insanely fast. The first time, I tend to just like, I don't really get nervous about stuff. Like whenever like Lindsay was just like, so are you like scared you're like going to go play? You haven't played? And I was like, not really. And then like, I just kind of go on stage and like, I have this moment of like, oh my God, this is really happening. And then I'm like, okay, fake it to make it. And then like, I just get in the zone and I go. But I went and I tried out for this local band and I've never been so embarrassed in my life. I didn't rehearse. I just showed up and I'm like, let me try and play a drum style I've never played, like this 3-minute, really fast stuff. And I mean, like my arm was like, there was like smoke coming out of my forearm. I was like, and I literally, there was a point where I was like gonna like apologize. I was like, I'm so sorry for wasting you guys' time. An embarrassment, but like I stuck with it and like I was able to do it with some extra effort, but not on the first try. But so it is physically taxing, and like this sounds kind of corny, like I like to leave 100% on the stage when I play, like so I'm a very like physical drummer. So when I play, I don't play complex, I just play hard. Which thrash metal drummers, you know, like many of them are monsters. So I try to play like with 100% when I play. So playing my 100% at 45 is probably like 30% of what I had in my 20s, but it's like 100% for me now.
You know? Right. Yeah, I went down this rabbit hole the other day on YouTube where I was just watching a bunch of Metallica videos, live videos, Metallica, but from their latest tour. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are in their 60s and they're playing this music. And I'm like, I can't imagine how physically tired they would be after each show. It's just amazing to me. And they still sound great. I mean, they're, like you were saying, their 100% now is probably about, 40, 50% of what they were when they're 20. But of course, that's just natural progression from going when you're 20 to like you're 60. I mean, Hetfield's like 62
you have no appreciation for that when you're young. Right?
Yeah,
like
right.
I mean, so like I literally blew my shoulder out just being a dumb jerk, like hitting my cymbals way too hard. And I play left-handed, so this is my hi-hat hand. So just like overplaying, like just to look cool. And which I didn't look cool, by the way. I looked dumb. Like no girl, no person ever approached me afterwards and was like, wow, you are a sexy guy. They're like, you look like you're struggling in a lot of arenas in your life right now. So like my Lindsay got to see me play and she was just like, you look crazy. Like you look like a crazy person. And I'm like, well, that's just like, that's my style, you know, it's not sexy. It's something else. So, but yeah, I mean, when you're in your 20s, you don't understand like this balance. It's just like when you're in your 20s and you have like a metabolism and you're like, oh, what did you eat today? Oh, I ate Burger King 5 times and 6 packs of Sour Patch Kids. And I weigh 120 pounds and I don't have a care in the world.
Oh yeah.
But all that time it catches up with you, doesn't it? So.
Oh, totally. I remember, again, my 20s, I was eating burgers from AM/PM Mini Mart for breakfast. I'm like, it's just so wrong on so many levels. But I did it. It was $1 for 2 burgers. And sometimes I'd go crazy, go to 7-Eleven next door and grab some chili dogs as well. But nowadays.
But what's cool about that time in your life is you don't really have a concept of your limits. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Your limits.
None at all.
So, which is where like a lot of awesome art comes from, when like people, one, they don't have like maybe they don't have super deep backgrounds or like context for like what is art, so they're making stuff and they're like under the delusion that what they're making is new or is different, right? And in that process, new and different things actually do end up existing, which is really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Excuse me.
In terms of that, this might be a clunky segue, but in terms of that like idea of new and different and like creation, what I know from like CMON's point of view, there's a lot of like investment in existing IPs, and then how does the time sort of shift between like getting something new or like revamping something or creating something from the ground up? Like what are those sorts of processes and like distribution of labor, if you can provide some insight into that, because I know there's so much going on.
There's a lot of like at CMON we've got a lot of different stuff going on, right? So we've got We've got intellectual property stuff like Marvel United and Marvel Zombies, right? And we have our own IPs like the Arcadian's Arcadia Quest and all the Zombicide system games, right? Then the Lang games like Onk and Blood Rage.
Right.
And Rising Sun. So like we've got like we're very fortunate that we've built a lot of brands to work with, and then we have this interesting thing where we can take intellectual properties and put them port them into our systems, or we have the luxury of designing around, like even like the Song of Ice and Fire skirmish game. I'm not a skirmish gamer. Oh my god, if you've not played that game is so good. That game is
right.
It's hard for me to play because I get very like emotional, like when my things die, like it feels like something actually really died to me, and I get my feelings hurt really really easily. But like it's so crazy. Like I got to work on that game, and then they like sent us stuff for the game, and they sent us like a palette of me and the developer, a palette of these. I'm like, there's this much stuff for this game. They're like, oh, that's like only like half of it. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
So being able to work on those types of things are really cool, right? The process, I mean, the process for CMON, I think the only consideration that might be different is if we're working with an intellectual property, we have to consider the license holders, you know, what they want us to do, and if they have any kind of like special requests or whatnot for how we handle the property. But I mean, it's a long process at CMON. Like from where we start and where we end, you know, I've worked at, as I mentioned, a number of companies. I've never seen a company that puts so much into its like presentation in terms of sculpting,
right,
artwork, graphics. I mean, and these things are like, we have producers that are really talented and they scrutinize literally every minute detail. If there is an opportunity to improve something, even if it comes at a cost, we'll almost always make that. Where I was in, you know, in a situation in the past where like I worked in companies where we're like, man, I really wish we could have like another 100 pieces of art. So what we'll do is we'll just take this picture of a book and we'll just color shift the cover of the book 30 times.
right.
And that one book will be 30 different cards that count as different art assets because we just didn't have budgets for things like that. So CMON really like puts the product first, and then in the process, they're taking a risk, right? Like they're investing a lot into something before they've gotten any money out of it, and then they put it up, and because they do such a good job and the games look so cool, and that we often work with like these cool intellectual properties and stuff, then we're able to succeed, and then the products are profitable. But I don't know if I answered your question. Sorry, I kind of like went on a tangent.
No, I think no, I think that's a great answer. In terms of working with existing IPs and bringing them into other worlds, I can only assume that a study in Emerald is a really good example of that and pulling it in. I know when I talked to Martin Wallace, I interviewed him for World Series of Board Gaming. We were doing a designer series, and he mentioned that was probably his favorite game. I said, "What's your favorite game that you've designed?" He said, "No, that's probably my favorite game." And so I've been like, when I heard the announcement that like CMON was bringing it back, that thrilled me to no end. What are the sort of what was that process like, tweaking it and adapting it to that existing sort of IP? I mean, it was already Cthulhu based, so
which is interesting, right? Because
not as much of a leap, right?
Right. Well, but it is still interesting. We took it from the Neil Gaiman or Neil Gaiman, however you pronounce his last name. We took it from that world, and then we moved it over to our own IP, the Cthulhu IP, right? Which there's lots of Lovecraft stuff out there, but like that's a game that we've revisited, and it's done well, and it's a game that people like. So that was a really cool proposition. So normally, like, you know, we don't need to take a lot of outside submissions because we have a lot of designers and developers within the company, and pretty much like if something comes into our, you know, it comes into orbit of us, and if it's something that we want to do, we can pretty much do that internally. Like we don't need to take an outside game. But a friend of mine reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey, just so you know, I heard Studying Emeralds up for grabs." And I was like, "What?" And like I've worked with Martin a few times, so I reached out to him, and he's like, I'm kind of already been, you know, pushing some ideas around. And David Preddy, the one of the owners of the company, the president of the company. I'm sorry if I can't remember exactly what his title is. It's something, but he's like one of the main. He's like one of the main bros at the.
It's something high up.
He's important. Yeah. He's an important guy.
Yeah.
He trusted in my opinion of that the game was good, and so we took an outside submission, another game, and we were able to very quickly coordinate how we were going to do this. He started sending me like art, and I was like, holy crap, this looks amazing. He's like, these are just sketches, and I'm like, what?
Wow.
Like the art was like like the sketches were better than any art that I'd ever curated for any game that I'd ever worked on. And he was personally handling all this stuff, like I'd send him concepts for the art and the cards. And then like also we wanted to kind of put an emphasis on the Prohibition America in the game, like especially like issues within racial issues. So there's quite a bit of diversity in the game, and there's a lot of especially when it comes to African Americans at that time. So there was like the Negro Leagues, and there was like the first African American firefighter, right? Like, so we tried to capture like the first African American Supreme Court judge, like nice. So we tried to pay homage to every single person that we could historically that fell within the public domain, and if they didn't fall within the public domain, we tried to create like an analog of them to kind of honor them. Because there's just like so much interesting stuff going on. So it's not just like Cthulhu, and sure, like we included stuff like Nikola Tesla, like that's super cool, but with like Carl Jung is in the game, which is like my favorite thing in the world. Like the fact that you could have Carl Jung on your team is such a weird thing. And just uniform support for all of these ideas, and like working with Martin, uniform support. And Martin was very like open about like, hey, I think the game's got issues at certain player counts. Like, hey, the game kind of breaks down in a couple ways, especially in certain player counts. We were able to make a solo version of the game, which shouldn't even be possible because it's a game about loyalties, but we were able to do that. So it all just like came together. And like, I mean, it's very rare as a designer. And I'm lucky enough that I've been doing this long enough that I'm entrusted to work on things like help with art or theme or story and things like that. That like pretty much everything that I thought was cool made it into the game. Like nothing, there was no awesome. No's. Like it was just Martin's like, this sounds awesome. CMON's like, this sounds awesome. And then the producers and people like David took the game and just elevated, through their processes, made the game cooler and cooler and cooler. So I'm just like super like over the moon, like genuinely, I feel so lucky I get to have my name on the box with Martin, who's amazing, and just what a cool guy that he's relevant, right? Like in a world where games are just being machine gunned into existence every day, he's a guy that's been making games since the 80s, and he's finding a way to remake his old stuff, keep it relevant, keep it cool. Brass is Brass still number one on BGG? Is that a?
I think it was.
Yeah, I think it's still number one.
Yeah, I mean, like he's just an impressive guy, and he's just like a really like honest, like vulnerable human being, like which I really appreciate about him. Like he's willing to talk about his shortcomings and things he's learned, and I really like that about him. So the project for me, it's been a little tough having to wait for 3 years and have people go, wait, you work at CMON? And I'm like, I've worked on like dozen games. I swear they're all coming out at some point. And for this to be the first one, it's really cool, which ironically has no miniatures in it. Not a miniatures game from the company known for making miniatures. And we talked about that. We could have easily made a gratuitous miniatures and then port, it's a cross pack with Death May Die, and now you have to buy this. You want to, and those types of decisions did not, they didn't go that route, which I thought was cool.
That's cool.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that could have been very easy to sell to the hordes of collectors who love everything Cthulhu Death May Die. It would have just been like, well. But the fact that it isn't, and that can just exist on its own merit, and like is a solid game and helps diversify the sort of stuff that exists in the universe too, is I think really neat.
It's I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. I know a lot of people didn't get a chance to play the game because it's like a Grail game, and like there's two, there's a first edition which is insane. Like there are cards that like the cards just say like look at the rules because there's like a half a page of rules for one card. Like when Cthulhu comes in, like all this stuff happens, and there's no way you could fit it on a standard size card. And we leaned into that, like whereas the second edition tried to clean all that stuff up and simplify the game. But the beauty of that game is in how ridiculous and specific it is. So we tried to lean into that while also tidying up some things to make it so that the game, now that there's been almost a decade of time almost to reflect on the game, that we could look and say, okay, well, what kind of improvements? And Martin was already like keenly aware of like where those improvements could be made. So yeah,
amazing. That's great. One, we are getting ready to jump into our top 12 list, but
you probably should.
Yeah. One final follow-up question. You talk about working with Martin Wallace. When you're designing or developing games, Travis, do you typically have a partner or a developer, or do you do stuff by yourself mainly, or does it just depend on the project?
So I think like having played in bands and having worked in like this big production company that had hundreds of people, I really like collaboration. I mean, to me, that is its own reward, and it's kind of the greatest reward. Like something I often say to the people that I work with that I'm friends with is there's no higher compliment that I could pay another person by saying, I want to make something with you, right? Like I want to share that responsibility and process with you, and I trust you and you trust me enough that we're going to do this together. We're going to like find a way to get along and agree. And like at the end, like something like is willed into existence. I think that's really, really cool. So I love collaborating. I actually, I'm working on a project now that is the first time I've ever worked by myself. I have a developer, and it's the developer that I worked with at Colossal. His name's Chris Ham, best developer on earth, by the way. And I've been lucky to work with him on dozens of games, and he's just tagged in. And I was like so excited because I've just been in a vacuum by myself, and I'm capable of doing that. I've been doing this long enough. It's like anything. Like if you were a tattoo artist, you have tricks and stuff that you've learned, and you probably use a lot of those tricks in every tattoo that you do, right? Or if you're building a house, you know how to put the foundation down quick, or build the walls quickly, or whatever. I know how to do all those things, but I really I thrive off of the interaction. To me, that's like my actual favorite part of it all.
Awesome. I want to thank Burzak for following, Zen for One. Thank you for resubscribing. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with us today. We've got Travis Chance in the house today. Very, very excited about the list we're about to do. You all are going to see the live recording of our YouTube video for the top 12 games with miniatures. And Chris, what is the name of our sponsor today? I blanked on our sponsor's name.
Crafting Kingdoms is sponsoring the episode today. When we do our main sort of role, I've got their bag right beside me. I'm excited to show it off in ways that I've never shown it off before.
Awesome.
Well, no, that's not true. I'll just show it off in the ordinary ways. That's what I'll do.
It's full of pop.
Yeah,
it's full of pop.
Full of pop and stickers.
And sour.
And I'll tell you, it took a long time to crack open all of those cans of pop and pour them into the bag, and it is very heavy, but it's sloshing around. So just wait for the big tsunami.
Cannot wait for over. Cannot wait. Well, right before we get going here, I'm going to start the Battle Royale. Folks, if you're a subscriber to the channel, you get one of those little avatars that are hanging out, and they're going to be dropped down there. Y'all are going to battle to the death here, and one of you is going to win 100 geek gold to use on your character. And hopefully the sound is coming through. It's always a crapshoot with me.
Wow. Well,
it probably will be, but if it isn't,
of the screen are fighting each other.
Yeah, they're fighting to the death. This is the inspiration for your next miniatures game.
Very, very Halloweenish.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. No. And I do want to apologize. I've been seeing in chat AG Fox and SailNet. I know you say you're upset that I'm not wearing a costume, and honestly, I just forgot it was Halloween. I had my Halloween yesterday, kind of. Well, I went curling yesterday because I'm Canadian, and so I wore a big. Oh yeah, I wore a big banana and pajamas costume while I was curling, and it was amazing. It was very, very fun.
Out Canada, be like, actually, Canada's Halloween is on the 30th, and It's on the 30th of May.
That's true. It's on the 30th of May, and we're sick of everybody else trying to force it down our throats. The one thing we keep agency over.
Hey, Heroic Logic, congratulations! You've won the 100 gold. Everyone else has been regenerated. Well, you all have been regenerated. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We are going to get ready to. I've got to turn this stuff off, and I got my next scene ready. And yeah, Travis, Chris, how y'all feel? You ready to do this?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's get into the list.
Let's kick it.
I think it'll be fun. I'm really excited about this one to see what's on everybody's list.
Same. Okay, so we'll start with the intro header, and then we'll welcome everyone, Chris, and then I'll go to that full screen with you for the sponsored stuff. Cool.
That sounds great.
And then we'll get to the list.
Perfect.
And Travis, you'll be the first one to kick off the list. You've got number 12. We'll lead you to that. So.
Sure. So my third game.
Correct. Will be the number 12. Yeah. Okay. And let's go to this scene. All right. Let me make sure this is all in order. Okay. Hey everybody, welcome to the R&R&R Show, episode 75. And here we are, Chris George, myself, Ruel Gaviola, and our special guest, Travis Chance. Gentlemen, how are you?
Wonderful.
Chris?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Ready to roll.
How are you, Ruel?
I'm fantastic. Honestly, I've had a rough week and a half or so, just feeling a little under the weather. And things are starting to pick up. Folks, if you haven't seen it, we have an extended edition of this show. And, Travis, we got to really know him. It was a really great interview. So be sure to click on the link below and you can find the extended edition of this show. We talked about a little bit about aging and how, the physical stuff isn't always there as you get older. And I've been feeling that big time for the last week and a half.
And just the mortality. Just our own mortality ever creeping towards us. That's how we want to start this episode. Just reminding everyone of your imminent demise.
Yes, nothing but the positive vibes here on the R&R Show.
Happy Halloween.
There it is. Happy Halloween, folks. We are recording this live on Halloween. Yes. Here on Twitch. Thank you for watching. And I'm going to turn things over to Chris, who's got some special things going on there, Chris.
That's true. Because we have a special sponsor for the episode. The episode being sponsored by Crafting Kingdoms. They've got a Kickstarter going on right now where you can get yourself one of these really, really slick, cool board game bags. You can see this all rolled up. Why? Because it's easily rolled up so that you can display your games at game night. As I peek my face around the corner, but it doesn't matter. My face doesn't matter. These beautiful little dividers that you can get in Crafting Kingdoms bags. I think these are a really cool addition. It's lined with fleece so that your games get that extra protection and don't end up looking like my bruised and battered copy of Splendor in there. It also has these little these pockets on the side, which I think is fantastic. And it also enables you to, if I can find the zipper, here we go, to store even more games along to your game night. This was a little expansion that I was bringing over to try, and I'd forgotten to take it out of the board game bag. And I'm really, really impressed with the amount of features that is on this. It's like they took a regular board game bag and they were like, hey, let's throw in as many different features that make life better as possible. Even they have a spot where you can store your playmats as well. I always find I'm not a huge playmat guy myself, but when I have playmats, I never want to bring them over when I'm traveling to a game night. And this, I feel like having this enables that to happen. So just some really, really slick features as I unclip this bag's top and lid and roll it and close it, because one of the coolest features that I think is out there, or that this game can provide is, there we go, is that it can turn into a rolling luggage. That's right. They also give you this little rolling luggage part where you can take the back of the backpack. There's some Velcro here that I'm going to take, and if I'm not too weak, put it onto the backpack roller right now. Hopefully I'm not too weak. and it's not. I'm not gonna struggle, but I'm gonna. Boom. It's right there, obscuring me completely, but you can see it rolling around on my table. And this is if you ever like go to conventions or something, and you often have your bags be on your back, and you're walking around from time to time. Just being able to adapt it and change it into that sort of roller is huge. So a lot of incredible features here. They also have play mats with like LED lighting strips on them. You can check out their campaign in the show notes down below. Thank you to Crafting Kingdoms, of course, for sponsoring this episode of the top miniature games of all time that I'm excited to get into, especially because we have Travis. Travis, for those of you who don't know and who didn't end up watching the pre-show, why don't you talk a little bit about where you are currently and why this is a great list for you to be on?
I'm in my house in Tampa. No, I am a senior. I'm sorry. I'm a
perfect. Yeah, that's all we need.
That's it. That's all the qualification. I am a senior
You just
designer.
need to be in Tampa.
Sunny Tampa. I'm a senior designer over at CMON, so the one of the preeminent miniatures game creators, content, publishers, if you will. So yeah, so I work a lot in that medium.
Yeah, and thank you, Chris. I'm glad, Chris, you're okay. I saw the lights coming down and things are just falling all over you. So I'm
you know
glad
what? I was
you're
just
okay,
so
friend.
excited to talk about CMON.
Yeah.
I'm still pumped up. A, that Travis is a Survivor fan, and B,
Yes.
that Studying Emerald is coming back, and I finally get a chance to play it. That's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
That was CMON's latest announcement.
I'm excited about that too.
Which
they're showing the game off
on
for the
personally.
first time. They're showing it off right now, Lucca, Italy. So
yeah, very cool.
Wow.
Okay, why don't we jump into the list? Travis, you're the special guest today, so we're going to have you start with the number 12 on our combined list of top 12 games with miniatures.
All right, are we ready?
Yes.
Do we need a drum roll or something?
Oh yeah, you're the drummer. Yeah, there it is.
I can throw my light on the ground again if that would help.
Yeah, I'll drum roll while I apologize to Chris for talking over him a second ago.
No, so I think honestly I've got a delay on my end, so it's probably going to be a little bloop, bloop. But we'll make it work.
We'll make it work. Yeah.
Chris's picks are always terrible, says this person. So so mine is, and honestly, this is tough because I had to kind of prioritize them, and I'm prioritizing them by how often I play it. So mine is War of the Ring.
Nice.
The epic Lord of the Rings themed 2-player game, which I have the big sexy collector's edition version of because that was a responsible way to spend money. That is mine. I have you guys played this game?
No, I have not, and it's on my list of games I must play ASAP.
Never.
And we're watching a fellow Rahdo contributor Shay doing on his channel RTFM. He did a How to Play War of the Ring in 28 minutes, and I know that when I finally play it, this is the guy I'm going to watch because he's the one that basically taught me how to play Twilight Imperium, which turned out to be my favorite game of all time. And so I'm going to watch Shay's video here. But I know it's a 2-player game, and it's set in the world of the Lord of the Rings and whatnot. I would love to play. Is there anything in particular, Travis, that you love about this game? If there's like one, I don't know, whether it's mechanism or if you're just a fan of the theme, something that grabs you.
I mean, I think this game is a work of art, and the fact that it's an older game. This is an interesting game from a design perspective, in so much that it's a very expensive and kind of hard to teach 2-player game, right? It really is just a 2-player game. You can play some other variants or whatever, but it's a 2-player game. It's so thematic, and the outcomes of the game. One, it's neat to go into that world and the Tolkien world and be able to play through those stories and see different outcomes, to kind of impose your own interpretation of historical events and whatnot through the gameplay. This game is so specific in its rules, like overly specific, like cumbersomely specific, but it is worth every second of it. Like if you can sit down and you can learn the meta language of this game, it is so rewarding and fun and investing. And it's just, my God, it's such an epic, it's such a cool game. And the fact that it's only a 2-player game, it really zeroes in on that confrontational element of these types of games. So because you're just staring across the table at this other person that you're inevitably going to hate because they're killing your stuff off. The multiple paths to victory, the dice system, the kind of like the multi-use cards, the theme, again, just like there's just so much specific nonsense in this game, but it's all worth it. It's all beautiful and amazing. And I we actually, Francesco Nepatello works at CMON. He's like kind of our lore keeper guy. He's one of the designers of this, and I know it was like an inspiration for the Dune game that we have coming out, the 2-player Dune game. But my God, if you guys, it's something I think if you're a real board gamer, like if you're really into games, you should do it at least once. It's worth it. Find someone who knows the game, who will let you be the shadow side, because that's kind of the easier side to play out of the gate, and give it a shot because it is awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you've got me sold because this game, my good friend Nick Murphy from the Brothers Murph, this is his favorite game, and he is a big Lord of the Rings fan. And it's interesting, Travis. He basically said two of the same things you talked about. One being a work of art, and two just something where you can deep dive into the lore and really get into it. And he loved the thematic elements of it. So I'm looking forward to giving this a shot one time. And we've got Shay's video that'll teach it to me in 28 minutes. So
I use that as a reference, and I'm not even kidding.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. My buddy, Chris, who works with me, is a big fan of the game, and he taught it to me. I loved it so much that last year my present to myself was to get the collector's edition, and then the collector's expansions, which don't go down that rabbit hole because there's not very many of those smaller expansions, and they get more and more expensive as you go. But it's such a thing to behold. Like, it's such a cool labor of love, the production of this. So.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Chris, we've got number 11 to you, my friend.
All right, I'm very excited to talk about my number 11. How I picked my list was I wanted to think about games where not just they had a lot of minis, but like the fact that there are minis, it kind of elevates the experience for me. That's how I like to think about purchasing miniature games. I don't want a miniature game where all the minis could be replaced by tokens and feel the same. I want something where like the presence on the table kind of really lifts it to the next degree. And in this one, it's a dungeon crawler. This I backed on a whim. I didn't do my research before backing as much as I normally do, but I thought, it looks like Diablo, the board game. It's a CMON game, and it's Massive Darkness 2.
Yeah.
I love this game. This made my personal top 10 games of all time. I've just been obsessed with this game since getting it. And what I think is so fun about the miniature presence on the board is that very similar to kind of like Zombicide, you're going to have a lot of minis, but they all kind of move clumped together as a group. And I'm in fact going to be going over to my friend's house, who I get to paint most of my stuff because I'm a horrible painter. But we're going to paint the mobs together, and we're going to do like different washes for the mobs. And I think that's important because you want to, every time you hit a mob, like one of their members dies, but they all sort of move around in clumps. And so having that presence on the board of these like giant mobs swarming towards you and you hacking off different bits of the mobs. And if you're playing as the Tinkerer, getting to like change your mini out when you put on your exoskeleton suit, it just lifts the game, right? I wouldn't enjoy this game as much without the plastic. And I find for a lot of games I can enjoy it to that sort of same amount, but for this one, it just really elevates the experience. I love this game. The classes are all so fun to play. If you're looking for a dungeon crawler, I cannot recommend this one enough. This is it's in my top. It's just like it's a blast to play. it's always fun doing these sort of one-shot scenarios. Leveling up your characters over those one-shots and feeling the asymmetry of those characters is great.
Yeah.
So yeah, Massive Darkness 2 for sure. I knew I had to put on the list, and I'm very excited that it's on here.
Nice.
And
choice.
I'm happy to put CMON titles on the list, Travis, because you make great stuff.
Agreed.
It's a great game.
Yeah.
It's a good representation of the company ethos of just making these games that you can sit down and play, and there's lots of like high impact fun.
Yeah.
I mean, fun. I think the in-game leveling system in that is so smart and easy. Just it's great.
Yeah. Well, nice choice, Chris. Very nice. Let's move on to our number 10, which is going to be my choice. You know, you were just talking about dungeon crawls and minis, and there was a bunch of these that I was wondering which one should I put on my list. And my list may have another one or two of these, but the one I chose for the number 10, which is my number 3 overall, is Star Wars Imperial Assault. So anyone that knows me knows I love Star Wars, and this is very similar to Descent, the old school dungeon crawl game, but of course it's set in the Star Wars universe, and you have little missions you can do, and you'll have your characters, and some of them are original characters. Others you may run into some of your old favorites, Luke and Darth Vader, and so forth. You'll have Han Solo. The expansion has a bunch of stuff, and you are traveling around trying to complete missions and fighting off the Empire. You are the rebel scum, as it is in the universe, and making it through the world. This is probably the first miniatures game I got that I really wanted to paint the minis, right? I saw all kinds of videos on YouTube, and I forget the gentleman's name, but he does these miniatures. They look like they're straight from the movie. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I took a shot at that. Mine came nowhere close to that level. So I stuck with a really basic wash on my minis coming through here. But the gameplay's fun. You're traveling around. You've got your different weapons you can use, and picking up the sidekicks or R2-D2 and so forth, and using those very standard, beautiful Fantasy Flight dice that you may have seen in a bunch of their games. So it's really familiar. One thing that I want to point out that I have not done yet, and I still have my copy that I want to do this with, is they have an app that you can use along with the game that basically becomes like the game master. So you're playing against that. So it's a 1v all game, but with the app you can play it solo. And I love playing solo games like this, especially something in the Star Wars universe. And that's why it's our number 10 overall, Star Wars Imperial Assault.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's been a lot of community around the solo community playing that game. Like I know there's been a lot of input into the app and into making it accessible, making those different scenarios happen if you are a solo player. So it makes sense that it's on your list.
Yeah. Okay, I love this game. Okay, now we've got number 9, and it's going to be through the power of video. Richard, take it away.
Hey guys, hey Travis, great to have you on the show at long last. And I gotta say, I'm not excited about any of your choices, but that's no surprise because miniature games are generally not my thing. But I do have a few to talk about today, and we're gonna do number 9, From the Roof of My RV. Jen and I are in Florence, Oregon right now. She's back there somewhere doing some window shopping and whatnot. I figured I'd get to work and let you know that number 9 on our combined list is Claustrophobia. Now, this game is freaking brilliant. 2 players only. One player is the heroes trying to plunder a dungeon. The other player is controlling all the monsters trying to take the heroes out. And for each player, it's a dice worker placement game. But the interesting thing is, each player has radically different style of play. I have no idea what is going on in that tree over there. I don't know if you can hear all the ravens or crows screeching. Anyway, though, sorry, what was I just saying? Oh, they've quieted down now. That was very distracting. So, if you are the heroes, you have 4 heroes that you are controlling. In each round, you roll 4 dice, and you slot them into these little dice trays, and you've got to pick which hero gets which die, because that specifies their stats for the round, what special powers they have access to, and it's a lot of fun, and every round it's a fun puzzle to figure out how best to use those dice with your heroes. And meanwhile, the monster player gets to roll dice and do a full-on dice worker placement game, because the dungeon player player has a board of all kinds of different actions that they can set up and do. Saving up for, spawning monsters, or saving up for like really big monsters or a big wave of monsters, making events happen. It's brilliant. It's one of the very, very few games Jen and I have ever enjoyed where we are really at each other's throats the entire time. And it's gotten a newer release a few years ago, like Claustrophobia 1643 or something like that. I don't really remember the specifics, but still, whatever version you can get, Claustrophobia, if you're looking for 2-player head-to-head dungeon crawls with brilliant Euro mechanisms and a ton of miniatures that come pre-painted too. That was so rare back in the day. There's a lot to recommend for number 9, Claustrophobia.
Okay, I've never heard of Claustrophobia, but just based on Richard's description there, I would totally be into it. A 2-player dungeon crawl, I mean, sign me up, and especially with the pre-painted minis, I'm always down for that. But I was unaware of this game until he just mentioned it right now.
Yeah, I've
heard really good things about.
It's good.
Oh yeah, go for it. It's my delay interrupting.
No, it's
Yeah,
not like we just started talking at the same time.
Yeah. I've heard really good things about 1643 for sure. I know quite a lot of people who talk super highly about that game. Yeah, it's something that I think the ambiance looks really great. Adding the miniatures into that to give it that presence, it draws me in. Super excited about that pick.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about what you said earlier, Chris, how, this is the type of game that I feel like if you try to replace it with just like little cardboard chits, it's just not the same, just because of the thematic tie-ins and stuff. So something to think about, folks, when you're playing games with miniatures. Let's move on to our combined number 8, and we're going back to our guest, Travis. What do you got for us for number 8?
Uh-oh. This is the shameless work promotion. You ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
Blood Rage.
Yeah.
Blood Rage. One of my top 5. You should have me in the video, Ruel, where I beat Sam and he told me he'll never play.
Oh, I did not know you were in. Of course, I had to, shamelessly self-promote myself when I was on the Dice Tower.
Amazing.
But
yeah, I played it there with him on a 24-hour stream, and then afterwards, Sam is like, "I will never play that game with you again."
Nice. That is Sam's favorite game, and I'm so glad this is on the list, Travis. This was actually my higher up on my list, but you got to talk about it. Again, what is it about Blood Rage that just, that floats your boat, basically?
Well, I think Blood Rage is interesting because in my mind, it's not really an area control game. Like it says that it is, but it's the drafting element. As a Magic player, going back to the interview, the drafting is really fun, but it's a really unforgiving mechanism. Because it makes the assumption that all players have an equal understanding of the value of things, right? So like you inevitably have someone who's maybe new, and you have a person who's played the game before. Well, the person who's played before has a greater understanding of the value of cards and therefore has a massive advantage. And this is one of those games where like I've played this game and I've seen someone like last place have like 5 points and first place have like 180 points. And it's just unapologetic in its approach. It's another, like, Eric Lang has this obsession that I believe started with his Game of Thrones LCG days of the Martells win by losing strategy. So there's the Loki strategy in this, which anyone who's played this game whines about. I don't even think it's that good, but it feels really good when someone gets both of those cards in the first round and then drains you and you can't take your full turn. This is the first CMON game that I played that had these just like massive miniatures, like the giants and things, like the sea serpent, and it just, those sculpts to me aren't as impressive as the newer sculpts of something like, say, Ankh, but still, this game was the first game like that from this company that I played where I just wanted to play it over and over and over and over. And it just felt so replayable because everything in the game is like a positive loop, right? You're always getting better. You're always making good decisions. And then you kind of turn your nose up at those cards where like +4 strength and then someone smashes your face in one of those. You reveal your quest because you don't have any of those and they're like +6. And you're like, oh, my guy's died. I think that's really, really cool. And it just this game has so many neat and I have a lot of fun memories of playing this game. And it's a game I don't care when I win a lot, but this is a game that I care about winning when I play. Like I want to win, and I like that about this game.
Yeah. This is I got into the hobby in 2015, and at that time, I was still playing this gateway games and, games that are for newer gamers, but this is the first one that I saw. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I want to play this." And a friend of mine had painted his copy, and the first time I played, I was like, "This is the greatest game of all time." I love this game, and as Travis was saying, it just seems infinitely replayable because you're leveling up your characters through the draft, and your tribes and everything, they evolve during the game, and I love that about the gameplay. And I had such a great time with the Dice Tower crew. I did not beat Sam. It's his favorite game, but I was very happy that I was at least in the running, in contention. But yeah, it's such a brilliant game, and it's a masterpiece in my book. Chris, any thoughts on Blood Rage?
Yeah, I mean, I also love Blood Rage. It made, I think, my personal top 20. Like, I love Eric Lang a ton.
Yes.
And I know that Blood Rage is considered by probably the vast majority of people to be the favorite out of that trilogy.
Right.
And there's a reason. It's because that drafting is so slick. I also love the sculpts in that, although it could just be that my buddy Zach painted them to like perfection. But like I love the difference of sculpt. There's only like 4 giant sculpts in it in that base game, but they're just so varied and so exciting to put on the table. And yeah, it's one of those that I will never turn down a game of, because I really I love it. I don't mind the swingy nature, but it's something where you really want to tell players before going in. You're like, listen, here are like the cards that you need to be aware of exist. And I'm gonna draft them first. It's like whenever I play with new players, I basically tell them every card that I'm drafting, just to be like, this is in my hand, so know that later on when I use it against you, you had a heads up.
That's fair.
Because it can be so punishing, right? Yeah.
You're like basically
love getting it to the table.
You're doing martial arts, and you're like explaining every blow as right before you land it. Here's the part where my boat and the sea serpents are going to be sacrificed for 8 victory points, and then I'm going to enlist, and then I'm going to pay a rage to put them back out, and I'm just going to repeat this at churning points over and over, and there's really nothing you're going to be able to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
The feeling
just right before, not enough. Yeah. Not enough for them to get out of the way.
Yep.
But just so that they seem like it was verified.
I think this is a game too, like when you get one of the additional miniatures outside of your clan, like it feels good, like you feel special, and you're like and it's almost funny how they get bigger as you go into the later
right
games. Like you get the troll in the first stage, you're like, he's pretty gross and pretty big, and then the fire giant comes out in the next one, you're like, oh my
god. I love that. Just one quick thought. This is the game that I use. It's been a while since I've been doing the open game nights, since the pandemic and everything, but slowly but surely getting back into them. This is like the third of the trilogy of, like, I would introduce players to card drafting. So I'd always start with Sushi Go, and then I go to 7 Wonders, and then this would be like the end of the trilogies. Okay, you've done Sushi Go, you've done 7 Wonders. Now let's play some Blood Rage. It's still card drafting, but you got a lot of cool minis to play with now. Okay, yeah, awesome choice, Travis. Let's move on to our number 7. Chris, what do you got for us?
Oh yeah, I was love talking about Blood Rage so much. I was like, wait, that wasn't even my pick. I have a pick now, and this is again a game where the minis really elevate it for me. The minis are what made me take note of it. It's got a unique art style that you don't see that much, and putting that art style into mini form, I was like, yeah, I really want this in my collection. It's Townsfolk Tussle. So Townsfolk Tussle is it's a boss battler, right? It's kind of a skirmishy game, and here we're seeing a prototype, so you just see the standees and you're not seeing the minis, but there's the minis. in the box. It's got this sort of Cuphead cartoony art style, and you go through in the main game. You go through four. You have to fight four bosses, and these bosses get progressively harder and harder. I would say don't do that. I would say fight two bosses, and that feels like a nice condensed session. On four bosses, it feels like it starts to get a little bit repetitive, and you're like, okay, I'm doing the same thing, and I could move on to another game. But at like two, it's like the sweet spot for me. Two to three, and they've changed that in the expansion. That it's like an official variant of like, oh, just play three bosses and level up your characters in between a little bit better, or you start out with a little bit extra gear or whatever. But it's really really charming. Mechanically, I don't know if it has I was really enamored with it, and then the more I played it, I was like, okay, I think because it starts to feel a bit samey. But I just find that the minis and the table presence and the world is one that I really want to dive back into. And so it's one where when I was thinking about top games with miniatures, I'm like, yeah, it is the art style. It are the minis that bring me into this world and make me want to get this off my shelf. I was contemplating like this and like Monster Hunter World, who have like those friggin' giant minis. But I opted with this because of like the uniqueness of, they're both boss battlers, right, and have kind of a similar flow and feel. But I opted for this one because of the presence that it brings and the art style and how much that art style really informs and makes the world enjoyable to play. Which, if I was just moving tokens around, I don't know if there'd be enough mechanically to keep me as invested. But because I have like the characters and the art and like get to add extra items and equip items and that sort of stuff, it's definitely a lot of fun. And yeah, so that's our collective number 7, Townsfolk Tussle.
Nice.
I haven't played that one.
I haven't either.
I've seen
it. Same. I've only seen it, but just based on your description, Chris, this is, and I was looking at the video, I was like, I would love to jump in this world, you know, and that's where these minis really do really, that. Yeah. They really do bring you into that world, right?
Yeah, it's really solid. I think it doesn't have as much complexity as a lot of other sort of boss battlers, and so not as much like rules overhead. You're really, it's stat checks. It's a lot of stat checks and a lot of similar stat checks. And so if that's a positive and a negative to some people, right? That's positive in terms of lower rules overhead and just getting the game going. It's a negative if you like your crunchy tactical moves and then the monsters adjust. And you know, this one, it's all about figuring out the puzzle of interacting with the terrain and using the terrain to deal the bouts of damage that your piddly little weapons cannot do. Because you don't use the terrain effectively, like the bosses, they'll just stomp you. But if you do figure out how to use the terrain to your advantage, then you can come out on top.
It's really interesting, this art style that's like Vagrant Song and that Cuphead style. It's interesting that so many games are leaning into that. It's cool. I mean, when I remember seeing Vagrant Song at what was it, PAX Unplugged last year, and I stopped and I kept stopping at the booth because I was like, this looks so neat. And it's a similar style in terms of aesthetic. So
I'd love to see more games use that style of art. I think it'd be neat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love Vagrant Song's art as well. Like but they have acrylic standees, right, as their like up level. They didn't go the mini route, and I thought it was neat too that they both are kind of similar in terms of boss battler style, but Townsfolk Tussle was like, no, we're going to go with minis. And I like seeing them. There's something about the 3D nature of what should be a 2D character. That's a very fun juxtaposition.
Absolutely. Cool. Great choice for our number 7. Let's move on to our number 6. This is my choice for the list. This, I'm going to say, was the greatest deal I've ever gotten on a board game, period. Nothing even comes close. And it's our collective number 6. It's a game called Mechs versus Minions. And when this game came out, it was $75 retail, $75 US shipped. And this game, it should be a couple of $100 with the amount of stuff they packed in there. And it's because it's Riot Games. They've got that League of Legends money, so they could totally take a loss on this. But it was like their love letter to board games. There's a bunch of developers there that are board gamers, and they decided, hey, let's do our own, and they came up with this program movement game, and it's a campaign style game. You have 10 missions. You each control a character, and these minis, the characters themselves are fully painted. Then all the minis have like a wash on them, and I've never come across another game. Again, Riot Games got all kinds of money in the world; they could afford to do this, but no other game that I've purchased at retail has been this phenomenal. And the game itself is fun. I'm normally not a program movement type of guy. It can be chaotic, but in this case, it works. Just having the chaos of, hey, you're running into your fellow players and trying to complete these missions. Why do you keep bumping into me? That's always a fun thing. But then trying to navigate the different like oil slicks and all kinds of different things. I think it's a great game, and it's totally replayable. I mean, it is set up like a legacy style game, but you can totally go back and do missions over. But they also have a very cool thing online where people had created their own missions, and they also came up with a few as well. There are some secrets as well, which is really neat. The game's been out for years, but I still won't spoil them. But there are some secrets in the box that you will eventually get to. And as you can see here, this is Richard's run through from a couple of years ago. You're basically playing cards secretly, then you reveal them at the same time, and then you move your characters and hopefully destroy all the minions. But this is one I've had so much fun with, and I still enjoy it to this day. This is Mechs versus Minions.
Yeah, such a phenomenal deal. Just like I love a good deal. I'm not a huge fan of program movement either.
Yeah,
I'm not. That doesn't tickle me.
Mm-hmm.
But I've often contemplated it just because I'm like, you know what? I need to pay homage to like one of the best board gaming deals that ever existed.
Right.
I feel like my love for deals and recognizing like the amount of stuff that you got in that box when it came out.
Yeah.
For like the price.
It was insane. Insane.
That's Game Tray's first game too.
Oh, was it really their first game?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Is it really?
Yeah.
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 Wow.
Wow.
Pretty impressive first run, eh?
Really impressive. Yeah. Very cool game. Yeah, I'm watching the video right now, just remembering some of the things that you do here. It's just beautifully produced, and just everything was so over the top for what it was, but it worked, and it was, again, we've talked about this a few times on the list, where I couldn't imagine this. Yes, you could play it with just cardboard chits, replacing all the characters and minions and stuff, but it would not nearly be as much fun as it is with all the characters and all the doodads that you get in the box. All right, so let's move on to our number 5, and we've got Richard, so take it away, Richard, right now.
Okay, good choices. I'm definitely getting a bit more excited about what you guys think. Although, I'll be honest, Blood Rage, I did try it once, not for me. But I would definitely give Townsfolk Tussle a go sometime, Chris, because, I just love the look of it so much. And, Ruel, you stole one of mine. The Mechs vs. Minions should have been on my list, but you rated it a bit higher than me, which is why you get the call. But that's okay, because I'm here at the end of a day of travel. There's the Umpqua Lighthouse in the background. I just finished setting up my Starlink, so we'll have internet for tonight. Let's just come over here and give you a look at our view that we'll be having through our front window this evening. Actually, I guess the sun is kind of blotting out. That's an ocean out there. But anyway, where are we at now? We're at number 5 on the list, correct? Yes. What was it? Oh, I bet you nobody's heard of this one, right? Space Alert Away Mission. This game is so fantastic, and it flies so under the radar. It was, I believe, the one time that Stronghold Games, under the leadership of Stephen Bonacore, actually tried to make a mini heavy game, and I love it to pieces. It's nothing like the original Space Cadets. It's its own thing. It's it's another dungeon crawl, but this time cooperative, unlike my previous one, Claustrophobia. And you know, we're on a bunch of different space stations fighting all kinds of scary space aliens. It's very much patterned after kind of a pulp sci-fi Buck Rogers vibe, which is a lot of fun. And it comes with dozens and dozens and dozens of missions, tons of content, you know, like almost a Gloomhaven level of content to it. But what's really interesting is it has a lot of dice rolling, right? Which I admit, roll to resolve is generally not a really attractive thing for me, although in a co-op experience, it's a bit better. But here's the deal. When I am setting up to, you know, hack the computer or fight the alien or whatever it is I need to roll dice to see if I succeed or not, the beautiful thing is the dice rolling is almost a formality. We are such super powerful characters compared to the problems we come across. Anytime we attempt something, it's very unlikely that we're not going to succeed. We're not going to be able to roll successfully. The interesting thing is the dice all have extra little explosion pips on them on some of the faces, and that's what you really want. You're rolling for those bonus activation actions, because the more of them you get, and therefore the more dice you want to roll, the more you can activate all kinds of powers based on who your character is, based on what your weapons and items are, based on where you are, even based on the aliens in the room that you're fighting against, that you could activate weaknesses on them as opposed to strengths on yourself. And so every round, yeah, I want to get in position. I want to do some kind of skill check, not because I care about the, I mean, that's just getting to the good part, rolling the dice so I can see how many of my bonus actions I get to do, and then figuring out how I'm going to spend them amongst all the different ways I can. And it's really cool. And it has a lot of miniatures, of course. Again, that really kind of pulp 50s sci-fi vibe. It's absolutely wonderful, and it's a real shame that it did not get more attention, because I think it's just delightful. Number 5 on the list, Space Cadets Away Missions.
Yeah, I remember when this game was out, and I have a feeling that when it came out, it was sort of overshadowed by another game called Captain Sonar. And I remember friends of mine, they got into Space Cadets. They were really into it. But the second Captain Sonar came out, that's all we played. It played up to 8 players. I think Cadets was like up to 6 or whatever. And even though they're totally different games, I think at that time, just the wave of, like, not hysteria, but the wave of hype about Captain Sonar sort of just left some games in the dust, maybe. So that might be part of it. I don't know. Thoughts, guys, on that, on Space Cadets?
I think, wasn't Space Cadets like a different game? Wasn't there a prior Space Cadets that was like a bunch of little mini? Is that Jeff Engelstein? Is that who did this game?
That might be. I think you're right, Travis. Yeah, let me. I'll look it up right now. Since
yeah, I know Jeff and Sydney Engelstein did Space Cadets, but this Space Cadets was designed by Dan Raspler and Al Rose.
Oh, okay.
Came out in 2015. Space Cadets Away Missions.
Okay, so I'm totally thinking of a different
but still
game.
published by Stronghold Games.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm totally off base here then.
But,
I've never played this game ever.
Yeah, I thought I had, but apparently I haven't.
I've also heard more about the 2012 Space Cadets with Jeff and Sydney.
Okay, well, there it is.
Yeah, but it's a good pick. A nice fun. That's what these lists are about, you know.
Yeah.
Getting that fun pick.
All right, cool. Let's move on. We've got 4 games left. Thank you for hanging out with us today, folks. Number 4 is going to go back to Travis.
All right. Nemesis, preferably Lockdown. Preferably Lockdown.
There it is. And we've got Shay doing the Rahdo run through there in the video.
And he got me to buy this thing. That's the.
Oh, really? What made you buy it based on this run through?
That's my undying love of Shay. No, he just does a really good job of breaking stuff down. I feel like when he's talking, when he's explaining things, he does a good job of kind of almost like making it easily digestible while also giving you a real idea of depth and complexity. Because he does tend to talk a lot about these really complex games, and like War of the Ring, my other pick, this is a game that has like kind of a meta language of its own. As a designer, I think this game is like a masterpiece. Like, this should not work. It is just like, you know, if you woke up and just every bad thing could happen to you, and like somehow that someone was filming you and that became like an incredible TV show or something. Like, it's just Like, oh, what did you do? Oh, I went to work today, and then 9 rooms caught on fire, and then someone was trying to kill me. I went through an air duct. I got my leg ripped off, and my guts were hanging. I've played games of this that they're so cinematic, and this game it's just so much bad stuff happens, and yet there's this weird understanding with the players that that's a part of the game. I played this with Lindsay at Dice Tower Retreat, and she misread her card and murdered me, like vented me into space because she thought her card said, oh, there can only be one other survivor, and it said one or more other survivors. So she just killed me by accident. And then I was like, what does your card say? And I read it, and then she's like, don't tell everyone, they're gonna think I'm stupid. And I'm like, and then we're playing with Z-Man Zev, and Zev's character is just like cowering in a corridor that's unsafe because he's afraid he's going to be next. And it's just, and then I was the guy that went and got everyone sandwiches. And that should be a bad time, but it was an amazing time because it was funny and it was memorable. The last time I played it, the entire ship facility burned to the ground and we all died. I played it where I escaped and I ended up winning, and another guy got to an escape pod, got in the escape pod, failed some kind of a roll, and his guts fell out and he died as he was being shot in space in an escape pod. So it's like, if you're a fan of the Alien franchise, there is no game that is closer to the Alien franchise than this. The game, the core loop of the system is super simple, but there's all this, once again, specificity with remembering what these rooms do and how you can use these rooms to kind of hack the game. I think it's awesome. I think it's such a really great game, and I think the miniatures do help elevate. It gives you a sense of being in a 3-dimensional space. If you feel like you're trying to embody that person that you are in the game. So I don't know. That's mine. I think it's great.
Yeah. I've not been able to play this yet, but
this was on my list.
Yeah, this is, as you said, this is Alien in a board game form, and that's what everyone tells me. And I love the Alien franchise, and this is a game that I need to play. And just looking at Shay's video, this is the one I will turn to when I eventually do play it. Chris, you haven't played this either, correct?
No, I have.
Oh, you have?
It was on my list. It's in my top 20.
Nice.
It's so good, and I agree 100% in terms of the cinematic experience. That's how I always describe it. I can remember more specific games of Nemesis than I think I can almost any other game. Maybe not the game that I'm about to talk about, but other than that, specifics, really specifics about it. Like one time where my buddy just again made a beeline for that escape pod and took out and was laughing at all of us as he set every room on fire as he went out. It's just where you make an unlikely alliance, and then where I ran back in to try to drag somebody out and then got covered in slime and all the aliens attacked me. It's so memorable. It's so memorable. The storytelling that emerges from this game is so good. And why it also is on my list is because the first time I played it, my buddy Zach had backed it on Kickstarter. And so he's like, okay, he had hidden all the alien minis from us. And so when an alien popped out, he then took the mini from the box and slammed it on the table. And so we first had a little face hugger popped out first, and we're like, okay. And then immediately the next room, the queen came out right away, and he's just boom, this giant queen was there. And we're like, this is the very beginning of the game, and it's doesn't matter. So we were all running away from the queen.
Amazing.
It was just a friggin' blast. Yeah, an awesome pick.
So cool.
This game is so good. I agree in terms of I would opt for Lockdown because I like the mechanics a little bit more in Lockdown. I think they're a bit more refined. I think the theme is maybe a bit more percolating in the original game because it's on the ship. It's on the Nostromo or whatever. But
the Nemesis.
But yeah, the Nemesis. So yeah, sorry, definitely the Nemesis. It's not anything else. Certainly not. Yeah.
Nice. All right, Chris, let's go to you for our collective number 3 on the list.
So our collective number 3, this to people who know me should come as no surprise. It's got minis in it, and it's my number 1 game of all time, and it's also another CMON title. I don't mind putting CMON on here
Yep.
because they're the friggin' bomb, and that is my personal favorite of Eric Lang's trilogy, Rising Sun. I love this game. I love this game. I can remember so many games of this game because, and this is what I think Eric Lang does really, really well, is creating that like above the table interaction, like creating a framework in which it forces you to interact and like really interact and talk with the people who you're playing against. There's no multiplayer solitaire happening here. It's like, hey, are we gonna go for this battle? Can we split up? Can we make like a sub deal? We're in an alliance, yes, but are you going to do the thing that's not beneficial for me? There's so much game that can happen here. And one thing actually that I think people get thrown and they don't understand the game sometimes has to do with the minis and how cool the minis are, because the sculpts of the monsters are really, really cool. Because one of the biggest complaints about this game is that your monster can be taken hostage, and people are upset when they spend 3 to 4 coins on a monster and then somebody takes them hostage and they don't get to be in a battle with that monster. And I say, yeah, sorry, that's a core element of the game, is taking people hostage. You have to be prepared for that. It's like knowing something could happen, like Loki could steal your points. Your monster could go away if you don't have the power to defend it. And I think that makes people a bit sore because of how fun the monsters are, and people are like, I just want to play with the monsters. And they don't realize that like all avenues are balanced, and it isn't just whoever buys the coolest monster wins. But I just think the monsters and like the minis elevate that presence so much. The little strongholds that came with like the Kickstarter exclusives, I wish they came in the base game, because they provide that table presence and that like surveying the provinces to see who's going to be spawning people where. I think that's one where I wish that was like in everything, because I think it is so important and actually is really important to the gameplay. And this is my first game from CMON that I can remember where they used different colored plastic for the factions. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so nice to people like myself who aren't that good at painting, or struggle with a basic wash. Being able to have that differentiation on the table really just like elevates it to an accessibility point for anybody playing the game. And so you don't need to paint them, and you can still have the fun of the minis and seeing the differences of the table presence and make it really readable. And I thought that was so slick, and like see it as the standard moving forward. And that was one of the first times where I could really clock that happening on like a larger scale mini. So that also made me excited about it. But of course, it's my number 1 game, so I wanted to put it on the list. And
wow,
that's your number 1 game of all time. So I will stop.
That's your number 1 game of all time.
I love.
Yeah.
Awesome.
This game reminds me of when you have different types of players at the table, they're going to affect your experience for any game. And I've had a really good experience with this game, but I've unfortunately also had a really bad experience with this game. And it was just, I felt like the bad experience, I think it was like a 4-player game, but for whatever reason, 2 of the players were super AP. They were just going way, I don't know, just way deep into this and worrying about every single alliance and whatnot, and it just dragged out the game. But thankfully, my last game of this that I played was a little bit more, everyone sort of knew what they were doing, but they weren't going to sweat every single alliance and worry about getting all the different monsters and stuff. So that one picked up, that one played a lot more briskly, so I did enjoy that. So, I don't know, Chris, in your experience playing this game, have you had that as well, or have you always just had an awesome time playing this game?
I've been in groups where I've had a less awesome time. Mm-hmm. It's still been awesome because I like what's happening. But yeah, I think it is, with games that have like a lot of above the table interaction and lots of like potential negotiation, there you need to have a group that wants to engage in that similar way. And sometimes you get a player who's like too aggressive, it can kind of sour it. Generally, it's been pretty good. Even this summer, I played it with 3 people, 2 of which were like brand new to board games, like very, very brand new. It's like I introduced games to them all summer, and we played this midway through that, and all 3 of them loved it though. It took us 5 hours, and they were engaged the entire time. Just like, because we were all ready to, like, I premised it. I was like, listen, this is probably going to take a long time, especially because you're all new. There's going to be lots of talking, but like, if you're in for the long haul, like, you'll have a good time. And they're like, we're all in. And so we had, they all had a great time.
Awesome.
Because of that, I think. But I agree. I agree that like anything that can be very player dependent for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So that's our number 3. That was Rising Sun. Let's go to number 2. We got 2 more games left, folks. I'll take the number 2 spot, our collective top 12 games with miniatures. And my number 2 is a game. It was a re-implementation of a long-running series, and it is Zombicide Black Plague. So I'd played the original Zombicide, and I love that theme, and I also love the one, I don't know if it was the original one or the second one or whatever, where they're in a shopping mall, because I love the old George Romero movies, and I watched them all, Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, etc., etc., and I love the theme of, hey, it's us, our little group that we've banded together, and we're going to get through this mission and just slaughter a bunch of zombies. But I remember the first time I played Zombicide, I didn't pick up on it as well as I wanted to. For whatever reason, the rules were a little bit messy from what I remember. And then, so I stayed away from Zombicide until Black Plague. And then I think the next one after this was Green Horde. And now I prefer the mall setting, but these take you back to, fantasy setting. But I felt like the rules and everything were a lot more streamlined, and they just seemed a lot more easy for me to pick up. And just like the other ones, you have missions to complete. And come on, it's all about slaughtering zombies, folks. And that's what this comes in. There's tons of that in this game. And another game that we've talked about all the time during this list, where those minis really bring you into the theme of the game. And as Travis had talked about earlier, just for me, this one is super, super cinematic. And, just thinking about all those great movies where, zombies are getting slaughtered. That's the first thing I think of. And it's like, yeah, we're doing it. We can get through it. And then having that inevitable moments like, oh, we're not going to do it. We're dead. That always cracks me up because that's what happens in these movies. But every now and then you do get to taste the sweet, delicious taste of victory, which is fun. And in Black Plague, you have different, a bunch of different missions you can do. It's a classic, and for my money, probably the best of the series. That is our number 2, Zombicide Black Plague.
Another fun one.
Yeah. A classic. I love that one.
100%.
Okay.
I could talk for hours about Zombicide versus Massive Darkness 2, and I have.
Yeah.
But that's for a different time.
Nice.
Yeah, Zombicide's a great pick because of that sort of like presence as well as the hordes move towards you.
Yep.
I think it kind of captures a similar thing.
Totally. All right. One more game, folks. It's back to Richard. Let's hear what he's got for us.
Okay, I was actually going to do the number 1 tomorrow morning on the road. I thought it'd be fun, but then Jen said, no, you got to do it here because the lighthouse just came on. You can't quite see, but you can see it's casting light and stuff onto the trees. And then, of course, the sun, she's a-going down. Oh, it's beautiful. Absolutely wonderful. And what better way to end with our wonderful countdown, number 1. Before I give it away, I'm sorry, those are 3 more I don't care about. Those 3 typify everything I generally don't care for with miniature games. But our number 1, oh my gosh, the greatest miniature heavy game of all time has to be Project Elite from Artipia Games. Man, this game is something special. A cooperative board game that truly captures the intensity of a high-velocity shooter video game and also the ambiance and dread and excitement of James Cameron's Aliens. This is so smart. Players are rolling dice as fast as they can, desperately trying to get the symbols they need to be able to move around, to fight the aliens, to activate, interact with the world and stuff like that. But the important thing is you will often find yourself, rolling skulls. And every time you roll a skull, that means you got to stop what you're doing, pick an alien, and move them one step closer to destroying our dropship. Because the board is brilliantly set up, even in these really, really tense, high-octane, high-pressure situations, the rules overhead is incredibly simple. And that's really important. But the brilliant thing about this design is you'll only do that high-intensity roll as fast as you can for a little bit, and then when the timer comes out, then things slow down. The bad guys start doing really cool special powers and whatnot that will mess you up if you left them in the right position. So it's as important about putting yourself in the right spot and making sure the bad guys aren't where they're going to do more damage. And the game comes with several different mission types. It's got a bunch of expansions. It got a very nice upgraded reprint from Cool Mini or Not. Surprisingly enough, I think that's awesome that Artipia laid the groundwork and then Cool Mini or Not, got it across the finish line. It is brilliant. I can't believe it wasn't on any of your lists. It is, as far as I'm concerned, the best heavy miniatures game of all time. And folks, I'll let it go back to them. But remember, the show's not over. If you follow the links down in the show notes, you can go to the extended playthrough where we will talk about some other miniatures. Because believe it or not, I got a bunch more miniature games to talk about. That'll be in the post show of the extended. But anyway, back to you guys one more time.
All right. Yeah, Project Elite, that is a big hit. It was a big hit a couple of years ago. I know people love this game. I love the whole real-time element to it. It captures that feeling of, as Richard said, just massive, gunplay or whatever. But any final thoughts before we wrap this up, guys?
No, I'm so glad
Travis, you go first.
So many CMON games. What do you know? No, it's
almost
great.
Like they're pretty good at what they do,
right?
Well, I think that was Andrew's intention when he asked me to come on here, knowing that we are a forerunner of that stuff. But there's lots of, there's, the reality is a lot of these games could exist without miniatures, but the miniatures do really elevate the experience a lot of the time. Agreed. Especially if you're playing something that's like an experiential game. Something like, can you imagine playing Project Elite with tokens, having to like manipulate flat objects awkwardly, picking them up and moving them? It would be awful. It would be really awful.
Absolutely.
But no, it's honestly, I have a sense of pride that so many of the games that we made it onto you guys' lists. Thank you. And I appreciate that you let me bribe you into putting all of our games on the list. It was we're off the air right now, right?
Oops.
Yeah. It's perfect.
Whoops. But thank you, Travis, for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you again, Chris. And thank you all for watching. Be sure to click the show notes below for the extended edition. We talk about all kinds of different games. And we've got one more thing that Chris needs to talk about right now. Chris, what you got on the table there?
That's true. Before we go, I want to thank our sponsor as well, Crafting Kingdoms. There we go. It's the nice big view, so I can put on my games are rattling around safely inside because of how gorgeous these bags are. Thank you again for sponsoring the show. Definitely go and check out their Kickstarter campaign. These bags are so well made. They add like such beautiful little details that I love so much. Like these little patches, you can get like a dice or a meeple, or I know when they sponsored the last episode, we were talking about maybe getting some Flamecraft designs on there. Hey, Travis, I can put you in touch with them if you want to make some CMON branded bags too. It's just, they're just super. They're super well made, super cool, and for sure, go check out their campaign down below in the show notes. Thanks again to Crafting Kingdoms for sponsoring the episode, and thanks to my light for not falling over this time.
And that'll do it for the R&R&R Show, episode 75. Take care, everybody. See you later. So long. Bye-bye. And we are back. Hello, friends in chat. Thank you for hanging out for the extended edition, where we're going to talk about a few more games. Let's see what Richard's got. And Richard, what do you got for us?
Okay, we've made it to the next day, and the show's about to go live, so I got to get this filmed and uploaded. Welcome to the post show, everybody. Although I'm sure Ruel and Everybody else have already done that. Here's the other thing we're doing on the road, playing games. I'm just in the middle of setting up Books of Time. I'm sure Jen is absolutely going to love it. Although this little dinette table has proven not to be enough. So we bought an extra little table to be able to make sure it's actually doable. Jen, meanwhile, is over there cooking breakfast. There she is. Hi, honey pie.
Hello.
And we're just waiting for the sun to get a little bit closer. You can see the sun line approaching us so that we can deploy the solar to start recharging our batteries. But the post show is supposed to be about Also Ran. So I've talked about my top 3 miniature games, but let's do a quick top 10, countdown style. Number 10, Myth. An absolutely brilliant game that does such an amazing job of making hordes of miniature monsters coming for you. So simple and easy to manage. Could have been one of the all-time greats if it didn't also have one of the all-time worst rule books, unfortunately. Number 9, Aftermath. Jerry Hawthorne continues to refine his formula that he introduced in... Mice and Mystics, and Aftermath, I think, to date, is his best game. Playing miniature skirmish battles on a wonderful storybook, and really cool, lovely worlds to explore. Number 8, Kick-Ass, the board game, which is a criminally overlooked game. I swear, Travis, I am not just going out of my way to put cool mini or not games. You're cool mini or not. Of course, you're going to have a higher preponderance of games that have miniatures. And Kick-Ass did such an amazing job of capturing that feel of a superhero trying to balance their superheroics and their day-to-day life. And I absolutely love that. And then on top of that, lots of miniatures running around on the map trying to beat them all up superhero style. Let's see. So that was number 10, 9, 8. 7. Ether Fields, which, if you got the deluxe edition, came with so many miniatures. So I'm going to consider it a mini game, and it's absolutely brilliant. I'm pretty sure Chris loves it too. Wonderful fusion of deck building and gothic horror adventure exploration. Let's see, number 10, 9, 8, 7. I should have really written these numbers down. 6 is Walking Dead No Sanctuary. And, oh man, talk about another criminally overlooked game, cooperative game set in the Walking Dead universe from the Sadler brothers, I think, if I recall correctly, as designers. And it had such a brilliant system of, even though we're working cooperatively, because of limited communication, there's this whole system of one player is the leader, they set the agenda for what we're going to do, and then all other players have to play cards with that in mind, but they might not want to. And so if I set the agenda for we're going to be really sneaky this turn, but it's the perfect time for you to play an aggressive card, and you play an aggressive card, that hits my morale as leader and has an effect on me, and it's super cool. Plus, it's back from when The Walking Dead was really good. Alrighty, number 5, Stars of Icarios. Again, you've these last 3, they're miniature heavy games if you got the deluxe versions, because they also have cardboard standees. But Stars of Icarios is Gloomhaven crossed with Battlestar Galactica, crossed with the Seventh Continent, which is an awesome combination of stuff, and again has a lot of cool spaceship miniatures. And then number 4, well, like I said, you stole it from me, Mechs versus Minions, but it was the right call. Alrighty, back to you guys.
Okay, yeah, lots of great games there. Thank you, Richard, for that. Chris and Travis, any games off that didn't make your list or didn't make the official list that you want to talk about?
Chris.
Okay, yeah, I'll go. We both offered it up to each other. Etherfields was close, was kind of on my short list. Richard mentioned that I enjoy that game. I do. I see Sailnit in the comments saying that minis don't do anything for Etherfields. I think they do significantly less for Tainted Grail. But I think for Etherfields, I like having the mini presence on there. They kind of flow in and out. I feel like the minis in Tainted Grail really just didn't do anything at all. But like for the Etherfields, I need to justify why I went all in on that one. So I'm going to say that they do. I also had Nemesis on my short list as well. Like I mentioned in the episode, Monster Hunter World was on my short list as well, but it only has 4 big monsters, but they are like the heaviest minis I've ever felt in a game. Yeah, and a bunch of honestly, a lot of mine were touched upon. One that I was surprised didn't make it on the list, I haven't yet played it, but I backed season 4 or season 3, is Death May Die. I was expecting that to get on the list because I know it's super well loved by people, and super well loved by people who share like a similar gaming profile to me. So I'm pretty confident that I'm gonna love it a ton, but I haven't yet played it, so that's why I didn't make my list. But that was one that I expected to see that I didn't.
Same. Nice. Right, you Travis, anything didn't make the list?
I mean, well, initially when I wrote down I wrote down 10, and they were almost all CMON games, and I was like, this isn't going to look good, so I had to dig a little deeper. But yeah, I mean, I quite like the game, the Great Wall from Awakened Realms. I feel like that's a cool game, although it is a little strange that the incoming hordes are just kind of cards with Tetris formations on them that you put your cool miniatures on. So there's a little bit of a weird disconnect there, but I quite like that game. Cthulhu Wars, obviously cool for kind of the first. I worked on a game called Mezzo at Colossal Games, which is a really good, very underrated area control. It's like an area control game where you skip all the preamble, like the refractory nonsense of all my stuff died and I go home and then I rebuild and then I move out. I Kemet is another one I think people probably would think of. Right. Kemet is one of the Cyclades was one of the first games I played, or Cyclades, or however the hell you pronounce it. Was one of the first games I played with miniatures that really kind of stood out to me. But yeah, I mean, there's lots and lots. I tend to, the more and more I play games, the more and more I'm gravitating toward these kind of experiential, long, hard to learn, hard to remember the rules kind of games. They're the ones that I set them up, I'll learn. I've set up ISS Vanguard like 5 times to play it, and then I'm like, I don't know that I can do this, and then I put it away, and then I relearn the rules, and then thank God for Shay, because he make videos for all these things. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of where my interests are starting to lie more and more as a player. Is in these. I bought the Vampire Chapters game. Have you picked the box up for this game?
No, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I bought a bag to carry the game because I'm not sure it weighs with the expansions at Gen Con. It weighed, I would guess, 50 to 60 pounds.
Oh my gosh! Whoa!
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it has minis in it, but the minis, they're just little movers. They could be standees or whatever. But I don't know. Yeah,
cool.
These games tend to. I like miniatures. They're fun.
They are.
Yeah,
they're
a fun thing.
Yeah.
Totally. I got a couple of fun ones on my list that didn't make the official. My Little Scythe. That it's the kids version of Scythe, and just those miniatures themselves are just outstanding, super cartoony, and I love that. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, 4X game. It is Scott Alms's tiny epic game that was actually epic. And I thought about doing Twilight Imperium, but honestly, those minis, they're all the same. They're just different colors, the ships and stuff. But Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, they have a bunch of different sculpts in that game. Another one, Cry Havoc. I think it's a totally underrated game, a space sci-fi area control game with a really unique combat system. Let's see, the other one. Oh, of course, I had Blood Rage at the top of my list. And the other one I thought was really cool, a game called Court of the Dead Mourner's Call. Another semi-Blood Rage type game, but this one has a very cool semi-cooperative element to it. Designed by Pat Marino, who's done a bunch of games for the op these days, but crazy good sculpts. It's from Sideshow Collectibles, and that's what their main business is. And then they do it in board game form. I thought is really cool. So some of the games that didn't make the list, folks. And why don't we call that the show, because we're getting close to the 2:00 hour. Once again, want to thank Travis for joining us today. Travis, you're wonderful. Really appreciate you sharing your story and also all the great miniature games that we talked about today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor.
And Chris, any final thoughts before we start the raid for another channel here?
No, I think going into the raid. Well, one, Ginga4L says no love for Arcadia Quest in the comments, so that's another solid one. I'd be interested to hear, Travis, your list of CMON titles that you had that didn't get mentioned as well to finish us off. as we go into there. But yeah, tons of lovely miniature games.
Yeah.
And this was honestly super blast hanging out. And I'm like genuinely, I haven't been able to stop half thinking about Survivor since you brought it up, and so I'm
I
so
watched
like
it, man. I gotta
honored.
watch the
I'm
last
like
episode.
I'm like I'm
Oh.
so starstruck that like I'm this close to someone who was so close to being on the show, and I'm being very honest about that.
Try again. I'll try again.
Yes. All right, folks. Thanks again for tuning in. We're sending you on a raid to Bonzinator. Stick around because you're going to get more Rahdo points that you can spend here on the channel. And give me 10 seconds. We're going to raid Bonz. Bonzinator is playing some board games. I believe she's playing Welcome to right now with her audience. So show some love to Bonz. She's a friend and an awesome content creator. You're raiding right now. And let's see if it's gone through. It has gone through.